As you walk through the valley of the shadow of hell, you will realize that there is something ahead. Something that lurks behind the dark veil. A veil that is beyond our own comprehension. Beyond the void.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to
Beyond the Void Horror Podcast.
That's right, it's just me in the studio today. It's episode 163. Yes, I know we said that we weren't going to be here next week, but you know, the thing is that we actually have an interview with director, composer, writer Rich Ragsdale, who has worked on movies like Ghost House and done a lot of work on music and stuff. He's got a brand new short that I just got to see that he's been showing around at the festivals, and it's really cool. So I wanted to reach out to him and see if we could get an interview, and we have one for you today. So you guys want to stick around for that. Still planning on doing my vacation here from the podcast only. I'll be working on the YouTube channel quite a bit while I'm gone in my absence. So if you want to extend your BTV interests and things like that, please do give us a follow on YouTube. There is going to be a lot of new stuff on there that I think you guys will enjoy. I just put up a review for episode 6 of the Creepshow Show on Shudder. Did a DVD Blu-ray haul. I also have a couple of other reviews and things on there that you can check out and keep up to date with stuff. Also, if you guys are listening to us as a podcast anywhere that you are, whether it's iTunes or wherever, depending on where you guys are listening, we would greatly appreciate any kind of rating that you could give. I don't ask a lot because I just don't like asking you guys to do things. I just enjoy doing this. But if you could go to iTunes, even if you don't have an iTunes, if you could give us a rating and a review on there, because those things go a long way to help us out and to reach more individuals like yourself. And don't forget, we also have our BTV VIP club that we do every month, and we'll still be doing a giveaway for that for the next month here, for this month, November. So if you haven't signed up for the BTV VIP club, then you should, because we do give away Blu-rays and DVDs for people in the U.S. If you're outside of the U.S., we'll work something out with you, and maybe like an Amazon gift card or something like that. We don't mind. We just want to be able to help give back to you guys for listening and supporting. We've given away quite a few this year already, and you could be a winner. So if you've already entered in the VIP club, you're done. You're good. You're golden. You're in the pile, in the mix. So make sure that you don't stick those in your spam folder, because if you do, then it unsubscribes you, by the way. Just FYI. You can throw them away in the trash. That's fine. But definitely do not put them in the spam, because then you are disentered. I don't know if that's even the appropriate words. But whatever. Anyway, guys, I think it might be that time for us to jump right into the interview with Rich Ragsdale. We had a great conversation. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. See what he's got coming up for the future and what he's all about. So without further ado, let's jump into that. All right, guys, today we have Rich Ragsdale, who is a composer, director, producer, and writer. He's kind of a renaissance man in the film industry. He's directed The Curse of El Charro, Ghost House, plus a few new ones we might talk about today. He's composed a crap ton of work and music, including music in Eight-Legged Freaks, Masters of Horror, The Mechanical Bride, Aliens vs. Predator, the video game, and all the aforementioned movies that I just mentioned. Welcome to Beyond the Void Horror Podcast, Rich.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah, man, it's good to have you. I appreciate you taking your time out today to sit down with us. You got some new projects that I'm anxious to talk about, but, we'll get into that a little bit later. So you are more of a composer that has become director, and some people may or may not know that. I know that you went to the Berklee College of Music and USC to study this, plus you did some work on, learning guitar and some of that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, I grew up in Tennessee, and everybody's kind of a guitar player in Nashville. So
Right.
I grew up playing guitar and ended up going to music school. I decided I wanted to get into film scoring because I love movies and I love music. So that became my sort of focus. And it just sort of that of course led me to come out to Los Angeles, and I ended up at USC studies in film scoring, and then I got out and was unemployed for a few years.
As any good hardworking individual usually has to experience, probably, right?
Yeah.
At some point. If not, then you're probably not going to do well.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know that you've started out with composition and music for movies and things, and you mentioned that was a huge inspiration, but did you have any bands or any movies in particular that inspired you? And if you were in your own band too, of course.
Well, when I was a kid, I played in a lot of bands in Nashville, but, the rock star thing didn't really work out. And I was really more interested in writing music than performing music. And so, I went to music school and studied a more orchestral approach to music. But, I was very inspired by film scores, everything from John Carpenter to Bernard Herrmann, his music for the Hitchcock films. I listened to that stuff a lot when I was a kid. I had this very eclectic taste in music that those guys really inspired me. I really loved, especially John Carpenter's score for Escape from New York when I was a kid. I just think it's probably the best synth score that anybody's ever done. And then, like I said, Bernard Herrmann and Jerry Goldsmith, of course, John Williams, all of those guys really got me when I was a kid.
Yeah, I love The Omen. It's
so good. Just a great score.
I think the music in that particular movie probably elevates it just so much more.
Sure. It's funny because when music's that good, it almost becomes a cliche. It's kind of like Jaws or The Omen, the kind of Latin chanting, it's like every exorcism movie has to have that kind of music. But it really starts with Jerry Goldsmith.
Right. I know, and it kind of reminds me of listening to my dad's 8-tracks when I was younger, listening to The Exorcist, which was kind of scary for me as a kid, Well,
there's some great music on the Exorcist score, too. And that's mostly like classical music or the Tubular Bells, Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells. But
right.
But I loved that music, too. I thought that film was, particularly effective, and the soundtrack is everything in that film.
Excellent. So I would safe to say that you're a pretty big horror fan.
Oh, yeah. From a very young age, I was interested in horror movies. My brother and I both,
Do you remember your first experience, your first toe dip into the world of horror?
Well, I remember there used to be this local station that would play horror movies late at night on the weekends. They would show a bunch of those Amicus and Hammer horror films, these old reruns of those British horror films. So I can't remember. Probably the first movie I remember, I have a vivid memory of watching that was a horror film, was Dr. Tarot's House of Horrors, which was one of those Amicus anthology films that had and it scared the shit out of me. I was just terrified by it,
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
When it comes to composing music, what do you think is, do you have a particular style, or are you just kind of open to doing whatever fits? Is that, how's your process?
That's definitely, I feel like maybe I have a style, but, I try to work within a number of different genres. It just depends on the project, for example, I did some music for the show Masters of Horror for Stuart Gordon.
Right.
We did this thing about Edgar Allan Poe. And so I made all the music. I tried to make it very, almost like something you would hear in a movie from the 40s or the 50s, mostly strings and very lush and very melodic. And I used some kind of some old, on top of the strings, some old period instruments and stuff that would kind of, call back to the 19th century and stuff. So, we did a short film recently that's very much like a meta 80s sort of thing. And I did the whole Goblin, John Carpenter kind of thing,
Which I love, by the way. And you're referencing The Loop, or are you talking about YOLO? Because I watch both of those.
Oh, The Loop. The Loop is, I think, YOLO was fun to do too, but The Loop is something we're very proud of. So
now, do you think that because you've worked in music, that it's affected how you direct, or vice versa? Like, how do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, I think that like trying to work with larger musical forms helps you sort of understand larger narrative forms, if that makes any sense. I mean,
pacing.
Definitely, yeah. And I think, a lot of the technology that's involved with making films now, especially in the editorial process, is very similar to how the music software is built. So like there's not a lot of difference between a nonlinear editing software like Premiere and Pro Tools, say, or Logic. There's like plugins and effects, and you cut things in chunks and you slide them around and you manipulate things, you manipulate time and the way things, and you can layer things. It's very similar conceptually. So once you have a good handle on, say something like Pro Tools, it's not a jump to go to like Premiere or Final Cut or Avid.
Okay. So are you very linear when you actually do both of these things? Well, especially if you're editing too, depending on the film, I guess.
I don't know. The funny thing is when I was a kid, I was very interested in drawing. I was very visual, and I don't know, so filmmaking to me kind of brings together all these interests that I have, which is like narrative, sound and music, and the visual. And it's just kind of I felt like all my life, all my skill sets were sort of pushing me. I ended up where I belonged, this is where all my skill sets were pushing me. Even though I didn't really I didn't go to film school or anything like that. I sort of learned on the job. So I kind of went to film school in public, So
yeah.
It's an interesting way to do it.
Well, you either got it or you don't. So I guess you learn to you sink or swim, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
So now you one of your first feature films that you worked on was Curse of El Charro, which I haven't seen yet, but it has like Danny Trejo and Lemmy in it even.
Yeah. But they both have very small parts in it. I mean, Lemmy in particular. We just kind of put Lemmy in because my brother and I, we loved Motorhead when we were little kids. And so it was like, we were like, why not just put Lemmy in the movie? That gave us a chance to hang out with him. And, it was cool.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like all your hard work got you to that point where you can meet some of your favorite people. So
yeah. I mean, that's the best thing about this industry is like, you grow up watching Reanimator and then, several years later, you're writing music for Stuart Gordon. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I also heard that you're a huge silent film buff.
Big time, yeah. Matter of fact, I was rewatching The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari last night,
Nice. Did you ever see the 80s version? I forget. I think it's just called Dr. Caligari.
Well, yeah, there was a remake in the 50s, I think, which didn't have much to do with the original film. And then there was, like somebody did a thing where they did a sound version using the stills as the background. Like they did it all green screen. It was, I thought it was like an interesting experiment, but it's such a revolutionary film. It's almost the most revolutionary film, the most original film ever made, if you put it in the context of its time. So I feel like it's kind of folly to try and remake it in that,
I totally agree. It's one of those things that, I think the 80s version was like an Andy Warhol version. So it was like completely different than the original.
Yeah. That was like a neon, so kind of almost like softcore kind of thing. Right?
Yes, it very much, very kind of exploitative art house film kind of style.
Okay, yeah, that was a weird movie. I kind of appreciate that one. There was another version that came out in, I think, the early 2000s where they had gone through and taken all these production photographs and did a green screen version of the movie, but using the production stills as the backdrop.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that one, but I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, it like I said, it's an interesting idea. It's not really it doesn't really work, but
right.
Yeah, I forgot about that one though. Yeah, the softcore.
Yeah, that one just blows my mind every time I watch it. Some of the weirdest, funniest lines in it, and almost. Yeah. obscure things in it I've ever seen, but sometimes those things make me just not leave the screen. So now you got a new film that you're taking out to festivals, right? The Loop.
Yeah.
And are you shopping that around, or?
It's a short film that we made. We've been developing a couple of features, and in the interim, my brother was like, let's shoot something. And, I was like, well, I've got a couple of these shorts that I had written. I actually wrote them for, Crypt TV?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so when I finished Ghost House, which is our most recent feature, Crypt TV, I took a meeting with them, and they wanted me to do some shorts. And I wrote a couple, and it didn't work out in that, the budgets weren't great. And, so I was just like, it was very friendly, but I was just like, I'm just going to hang on to these. So The Loop was one of them. And I showed it to my brother, and he was like, oh, that's cool. Let's make this. And so we just kind of shot it for fun. And, it's been people really have reacted positively to it. So we're actually trying to sort of develop it into a feature concept. So
I saw that on IMDb, and I didn't know if I could ask that or not, because I was like, oh, they're going to make a feature? This is great.
Yeah.
How about could you give them, the people listening, just a kind of like a quick elevator pitch of like what The Loop is to you without spoiling anything, I guess?
Sure. It's a very meta horror film. The short in particular, it's very much a love letter to the VHS era of horror, the kind of 80s blockbuster era. The feature version is going to be, we're sort of talking about it as kind of like Goonies meets Nightmare on Elm Street meets Groundhog's Day. So it's
that's pretty much a pretty accurate thing, I can imagine, actually.
So that's without giving anything away. I mean, it's hard to sort of talk about without spoiling.
Right. To be fair, when I saw the picture on Twitter, because I wrote on the Twitter and I said, oh, tell me more, because I knew when I saw the loop with the infinity symbol, I was like, oh, I get it. I think this is going to be great. Yeah.
Well, and it's just like, it's very meta in regards to the 80s, and that the Loop is this kind of VHS era horror villain who is sort of equal parts like Freddy and Hellraiser and, Jason and Michael Myers, Candyman. He's got the funny one-liners. He's got the prosthetic makeup. He's got a cool black trench coat and chains. And, we just wanted to kind of make it an amalgam of everything that you love about the 80s.
Right. In fact, I got to ask, and I won't spoil it, of course, but there's a scene in it where he's like, this makes it so much scarier. And I'm like, that's got to be Ghostbusters, right?
Well, it's funny because he comes in and there was improvised on the day, because we had this we shot the sort of VHS-y portion of the horror film on a stage, so it would look sort of artificial and kind of cheap and 80s low budget. And there was an old piano, and my brother, who plays the Loop, comes in and started banging on the piano, and he goes, now that makes it real fucking scary, doesn't it? Just make a joke about it's really a joke about the music. It's like how music makes everything scarier and horror, so. And it was just, he kind of improvised it, and we thought it was hilarious, so we kept it,
Now, is he done? I didn't get to look this up, but your brother and you have a production company called K&R.
Yes.
Which I would assume is Kevin and Rich.
Yes. It's very clever like that. Yeah.
Hey, simple work sometimes, Yeah. But is he acted a lot before, or is this just one that he was just like, oh, I got to do this?
Recently he's been doing a lot more acting. He loves doing it. He's always been very interested in performing, and he's a producer by trade, but he's been segueing into doing more and more acting. I mean, he's got a small part in Ghost House, and he pops up here and there in other films, and so I thought that the thing that was, we wanted to shoot something anyway, just to kind of, be shooting.
Right.
And I was like, look, you could play this guy. You'd be perfect for this. And I think it was some childhood wish fulfillment for him, too, to get to play an 80s horror villain, like the kind of guys we watched when we were little kids on videotape,
Yeah. Now, are you going to carry him through to the feature, you think, or?
Oh, yeah. Well, he's the titular character, so he's
excellent.
He's got to be there.
Yeah, I was hoping. I mean, you never know. Yeah. Sometimes they switch it up when they do that. But so one of the things I loved about your short is that the Loop, of course, is that you have this intentional 80s sort of like lens, I guess, for the whole thing. Now, are you going to carry that sort of aesthetic through to the feature as well?
Oh, entirely.
Ah, great.
So, yeah, I mean, the thing is that, I mean, obviously there's a lot of interest in the 80s right now, just sort of coincidentally, I think, but because I wrote this a couple of years ago, but, like you have Stranger Things and the New American Horror Story. And so there's a lot of 80s in the air. But, for me, like a lot of it, like, say, Stranger Things to me actually feels like a very contemporary show that's set in the 80s, you know, whereas like our goal would be actually to make something that kind of feels like you just stuck a videotape in and you're actually watching something from the 80s, kind of warts and all. The 80s had some, was great for horror, but it had some really cringy stuff too. And we'll embrace all of that.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's a really good move, because I think with the aesthetic of this short, it's just so great, and you just want to be in it. I would want to watch an entire movie, because in some ways, I think a lot of the 80s movies, or if you look at music videos from the 80s even, it has that kind of same aesthetic in a way, and I think it's like super cool when they bring that forward to a feature film.
For sure. I mean, and we're gonna, we would embrace all of that, and I grew up with it, so it's like I feel very familiar with it. So
right. Now, I know that you, as far as writing music, you typically, I've heard you say in some of the interviews that I watched, you were talking about how you like a very organic approach. How does it feel to be working on a little bit more synthy vibe? Are you doing analog synths? Are you doing like, straight digital? Like how is that process?
Well, for the loop in particular, because again, I was just trying to sort of stay true to the whole 80s thing. I wrote the music with a friend of mine who has a cache of vintage synths.
Nice.
So I just go over to his place, and I'd already kind of have the themes and stuff worked out, and then we would just sit down and kind of, bang it out to picture. It was all like genuine analog stuff, there's probably some, more traditional or like contemporary digital stuff in the sound design and stuff, but all the music's like, Junos and Moogs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I get to mess around with the Moog and a couple of them, and man, it's fun.
It's kind of crazy. I mean, you just like hold down a low octave with a big fat pad, and you're just like, oh, you're already in the 80s, So
that's so true.
So yeah, I mean, I tried to keep it, everything, we shot with like older anamorphic lenses when we shot the short, and we used analog synths for the music and stuff. Just try to keep everything as pure as possible.
Now, are you looking for a date to try to get that finished by, or is there a time that you think you might be able to?
What you mean, the feature? Or?
Yeah, on top of the short, which is out in festivals.
Yeah, I mean, well, I've been working on the script, and we haven't really shopped it anywhere yet because it's not quite done.
Right.
But we're gonna probably start trying to push it pretty soon. I think in the interim we might do we're discussing doing a sequel to our film Ghost House, which did quite well for us. So
I saw that, yeah.
So that's probably our next step is
Excellent.
Another Ghost House film. But in the meantime, I'll be developing the loop thing, and
well, especially somebody will bite on the short maybe too.
Yeah. For sure.
You have another film that I saw in the list on IMDb here, a couple actually that I'm assuming that you kind of have fleshed a little bit out. One that's called Let It Kill You. Can you talk a little bit about that? Or
yeah, so that's a film I have been attached to direct. It's a werewolf film. It has sort of a gay love story at the center of it, and it's pretty great script. And I met the company through Scout Taylor Compton, who was in Ghost House, and she's kind of famous for having done Rob Zombie's Halloween films, among other things.
Which she does crazy really well.
Oh yeah, she's great. And we actually I shot a film with her this summer too, which we're in the process of editing. But she introduced me to the production company that is making this film, and we've gotten along quite well. And like I said, the script is very good, and they're in the process right now of raising the money, and it's pretty much ready to go. So once the funds are in place, I think we'll be shooting a movie,
Excellent. So we're going to see some of the same characters in the new Ghost House?
Yeah, although, it's really more of a prequel. So we're setting it will have all the characters will return to a certain extent, but we're going back to the sort of the beginning of the story with it'll feature like Mark Boone Jr.'s character as a young person who's just kind of gone AWOL from Vietnam and ends up in Thailand, and goes from there. So we get to do sort of a Vietnam era period piece / ghost story. It's quite cool.
Very cool. Yeah, that concept is really cool because it is quite eerie to see all those little ghost houses everywhere, which I've heard they're pretty regular things out there.
Yeah, I mean they're everywhere. I mean they're ubiquitous. So it's like everybody has one. I mean, outside everyone's house, there's a ghost house. Outside of banks and hotels and hospitals, everywhere there's at least one ghost house. So, and we sort of based the original script, a little bit on some of our own personal experiences. So in Thailand, my brother's wife is Thai, and so we've spent some time over there.
Yeah, and I was curious about that. Like when you were doing in the first movie, you have some rituals and things in there. Now, did you have to pull from sort of like a pool of already known knowledge out there about these kind of things to do that?
Yeah, I mean, all of that stuff is basically based on stuff we encountered or came across while we were in Thailand. And the ritual at the end is kind of based less on the sort of Buddhism that is prevalent there, and more on there's kind of an older pagan, or not pagan, but like Thai black magic kind of thing that goes way back. So we had to kind of invent sort of the aesthetics of some of the ritual. But, all our production designers and most of our crew was Thai. So they were helping us navigate those waters.
And I really appreciate that you guys did a lot of like very physical work on that movie, like practical and mixed it all together, which I thought was really great use.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, there's some, like we were talking about silent films and stuff. There's scenes where like I'm running things backwards and just kind of doing all those tricks that they developed, back in the 20s, and they're just, I feel like they're just as effective, and you see it. You might even recognize the trick, but it just looks so cool. You're kind of like, oh, that's dope. I hope people appreciate that stuff.
No, absolutely. My girlfriend and I were watching it. She was like, this is really cool.
Well, tell her I said thank you.
Yeah, I definitely will. She was pretty impressed. She loves like stuff, those kind of stories. She's a big fan of like Drag Me to Hell and things like that. So,
well, Sam Raimi's a favorite of ours too. So, we love Sam Raimi.
Hell yeah. Do you now? You might have mentioned this in another interview or something, but I don't think you ever touched upon exactly what happened, although I didn't listen to the whole thing. But you said something about you had some actual experiences out in Thailand that kind of spooked you out, maybe? Or can you talk about that?
Well, so it was like, so my brother had a child, and he and his wife took his son over to Thailand to sort of meet the Thai side of the family, to introduce the baby to the family. And so my girlfriend and I tagged along. And when we got there, she was pretty jet lagged, and we were staying in a place called Ho Hin, which is south of Bangkok and kind of a coastal place, but pretty remote. And my girlfriend was having some bad jet lag issues. And so I encouraged her. It was like, we got to get up, get you on schedule. And we went out to take a walk. And we're walking through the jungle, and we came across this place where all the locals there in Ho Hin had taken all their old ghost houses and just thrown them away. It was like a graveyard of these old ghost houses. And so she and I are like taking pictures and like pulling things out of it and stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is probably a really bad idea. And then we had a driver who was a friend of my sister-in-law, a guy who had a van. He would drive us around, and his name was Go-Go. And so we named her in the film after him. And I asked Go-Go, I was like, hey, told him about all these old ghost houses we had found. And I was like, hey, could we maybe go back and grab one and take it with us? And he's like, no, not my van. So we were like, oh, okay, maybe there's an idea here. So, there's some things like that. There's like, we also tried to kind of shoot in a lot of the grungier side of Bangkok, like not so much that, there are the touristy moments at the beginning of the film because that's where most people go. But like, we're more sort of interested in the sort of the out of the way kind of weird stuff. stuff. And so we tried to work a lot of that stuff into the film too. And there are a number of characters in the film that are kind of based on people we met over there, like Go-Go, so.
Right. Well, you even make word of the whole jet lag issue in the movie, and you also talk about Go-Go, obviously.
Yeah.
And even visit the graveyard of all those ghost houses. So that's pulling from real life stuff right there.
Yeah, completely. And then we did a lot of research into like Thai black magic and Thai, the superstitions, it was cool. And it was a very hard, we made it on a very low budget, but it was a very hard film to make because it was very ambitious for its budget, but it was a real adventure making the film. So, it has a very special place in my heart. So
absolutely. And guys, if you're listening and you want to see this movie and you haven't yet, I believe it's up on Netflix. That's how I watched it. So if you guys want to check that out, definitely give it a whirl.
Please.
So now I want to ask you, if you had like the perfect opportunity to make whatever you want, even without the realm of possibility, with an endless amount of money, what would be the number one movie that you would like to make, like story-wise?
That's a good question. It's almost sort of an intimidating question. We have a million ideas and a lot of things that are like kind of developed or we're developing.
They're all your babies, of course.
They're all our babies.
Yeah.
I would love to make something that kind of harkens back to the silent era a little bit. There's a silent film called The Student of Prague that I think is a really fantastic movie. It's kind of based on, they took like a bunch of Edgar Allan Poe stories and a bunch of E.T.A. Hoffman stories and kind of squished them all together. And to do something like that, I think would be a lot of fun. But there's, I love making movies. I love making things in general, music and film. And we have a lot of projects, like I said, that we're kind of developing that, they're all stuff I really want to do. It's kind of hard to sort of say,
sure,
I'd like to do this or like to do that. I would like to work with I would love to do something with, a really substantial budget.
Yeah.
Because everything is such a struggle. I'm sure it's still a struggle even on a larger budget, but at the same time, just the luxury of time and resources would be fantastic,
No, that's the other thing is that if you do have a larger budget, you have a larger crew, and
Yes.
then it's a whole different game, I would assume. So
yeah, that is very true. We pride a lot of it comes from doing music videos and things like that. But we try to make things look and feel as sort of big as possible. So like Ghost House is a movie that I think looks and feels at least a little bigger than what we had to make it with. It was a very, very ambitious thing, and things are a little cheaper in Thailand, so that helped. But at the same time, everybody worked very hard on that movie.
yeah, I've actually seen a lot of big, famous Italian directors that have gone to Thailand to shoot some zombie films, actually, because they loved working there.
Yeah, well, the people are great, the crews are great, the food's great. It's just kind of a win-win all around.
I really appreciate your time there today, man, and it was really a pleasure to talk with you, Rich. So I thank you for coming on and sharing your world with us today. Is there anything that anybody can catch the loop out in a festival near them, maybe, that you are having coming up?
Well, let's see. We're about to play Morbido Festival in Mexico City on the 2nd of November. So anybody in Mexico City, come hang out. And then we're at the Buried Alive Film Festival in Atlanta. And then there's a bunch of them that we're just waiting to see. They're waiting for them to announce. Of course, most of the horror ones are like, the sort of horror / genre festivals have just kind of passed.
Right.
We played a number of those, and it was, we got really, really great responses. So we're very happy. But the kind of the Halloween season they coincide with Halloween. So it's, that's about done. So then there's some other festivals we've submitted to that are not as genre-y. We'll see if they play there. So
excellent. Well, I hope it gets out to the wild for people here soon, because I really enjoyed it. So thank you for sharing it with me.
For sure. And if people are interested, they can, follow it on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. We'll put any updates there.
I'll include some links down below for you guys so you can check that out. But thanks for coming by, and I wish you well on your projects ahead.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for chatting with me.
All right, that was the interview with Rich Ragsdale. Thank you so much for coming on, man. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Looking forward to your future projects here. Thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to sit down with us and talk. We greatly appreciate it. What'd you guys think? I hope you enjoyed that. It's an extra little episode here, little bonus 163 episode for you guys, because I don't know how to not work. It is impossible for me. And this vacation is going to be more of a struggle not to do work than it is of relaxation. But I'm going to try, damn it. I'm going to fucking try. But yeah, guys, next week there will not be anything for sure, 100%, unless you are on our YouTube channel. So I would stick around for that. You can go and look up Beyond the Void Horror Podcast on YouTube, and you can find us there. Or there's always links below, so you can check us out at longlivethevoid.com. But I hope that you guys had an amazing Halloween. We especially did. We got to hang out with family and friends and such. So I will see you in a couple of weeks. But thanks again, guys. And as always, long live the void.
You've been listening to Beyond the Void Horror Podcast. Tune in every Monday